Nigerians will now have to pay extra to have electricity by July the 1st, although they have come up to say that that story should be debunked. But the initial story that Nigerians will have to pay about 40% tariff for increase in electricity. And they say the official exchange rate, which was 441 naira to a dollar, may now be adjusted to about 750 naira to a dollar, which has affected the distribution of electricity to Nigerians. Although they have advised Nigerians with prepaid meters to purchase bulk energy units for the end of the month, as this will allow them to take advantage of the current rates. It is still at a huge cost. With the removal of fuel subsidy and now a set increase in electricity, how will Nigerians survive? What is the alternative? Well, joining us in the studio for this conversation is a lawyer and social development advocate, Jide Ologun. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
And via Zoom is a principal consultant, DRNL Consult Limited, Aderonke Onodeko. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Yes. Right. Let me begin with you, Aderonke. Nigerians have been reacting to this move by the distribution companies, as well as even the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. They are even threatening to move outside the country to perhaps be in business, remain in business. And the question for Nigerians is, how justified is this move by the distribution companies? Yes, they are talking about the floating of the naira and how it is impacting the business. But from your point of view, is this really justified?
Well, first and foremost, we need to have a historical view on the situation at hand. In 2020, it was proposed to the government for the tariffs to inch up a bit. And I remember very clearly, and most Nigerians would recall, that the National Assembly halted it. So we've had this in the horizon since 2022 June. So it's giving us like 3 years to at least wrap around our minds around the fact that there is a possibility that this will happen. So it's not coming to any of us, neither is it coming to the manufacturers as a new item on the national and economic agenda. However, it's unfortunate that at the same time, the naira is floating, fuel prices are going up, tariffs for power are going to go. It's very, very difficult for people to wrap their minds around this. However, we have to look at it from 3 different perspectives. What do the discos want? How is it going to affect and impact the lives of the common citizens? And the engine of the economy are the small businesses, the larger businesses, and everybody who uses power to conduct business for their livelihoods. It's very, very important, first and foremost, that the government steps in. They need to open up the landscape for dialogues. More conversations need to be had around this issue. The discos need to present their case to Nigerians. The government needs to mediate, and Nigerians need to explain to them how this impacts them so that we can find a common ground on how the pain can be eased. It's unfortunate that we're at this point and everything is happening at the same time. But the first thing that I suspect I will serve everybody better is if there's open dialogue on this issue. So it's not a case we're going to do this on the 1st of July and you can't do anything about it. They need to carry everybody along. They need to explain to people how they can improve their immediate environment to accommodate somewhat these changes that are going to happen. And man does have a point. The prices of production will go up. And that's very hard, even in these hard times that we are. They also, if this happens, people will buy less goods and services because they're feeling the economic pinch across the board. It might contract the economy. It might cause some businesses, especially the SMEs, might fold up because power is a large percentage of what they spend their money on. So if their prices go up and people are not patronizing them, where are they going to make their livelihoods from? So we have to look at all of these things. And on the other side, we have to figure out ways to cut down on wastage. You cannot be boiling a full kettle when you need to make a cup of tea. You only boil what you need. Switch off lights after you. Switch off your lights if you have to. If you have a large freezer and you're not using it to full capacity, scale down. So there's so many things that need to be done and dialogues that need to be had so that everybody can adjust accordingly. And I hope I would have an opportunity to share some of my views on what can be done.
Absolutely.
To ease this. Yes.
Right.
Okay, let's come back to the studio to also compare what you've said so far, Ms. Onodeko, with our guest here in the studio. So, what do you really think? Because what is also fueling the speculation or the controversy on ground now is that there's been no official confirmation or communication. I mean, the guest also said something about lack of communication and how this lapse can also be curbed. But with what we have now, July 1 is almost here. What are your sentiments regarding this planned increase in tariff?
Basically, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission is the one to give the go-ahead.
Yeah.
And it was established in 2005. When the former president of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, was carrying out the electricity and power sector reform. And that has not been given now. So the discourse who started coming out to say we are going to increase may just be speculating. All right. In fact, some of them have come out to say, please ignore the fake reports. But by and large, they have cleaned up. Many people have gone to buy in bulk and things like that. And it's a good thing she started from the historical perspective. And I want us to address that right now. Because while I support the dialogue, what we are engaging in a dialogue over is very important. And as a country, I think we have done poorly in developing our energy sector. Historically, the first attempt to generate electricity was in 1866 in Nigeria, where 2 power generators were installed in Lagos colony, and that is a long time. And in 1951, we had the Electricity Commission of Nigeria, and we have come all the way down through NEPA, everything. And if you look at even the capacity we generate, how we transmit, it's so poor. And the global standard is that electricity should be available and affordable. And let me say this, Nigeria is the giant of Africa, but research revealed to me that there are some countries in Africa that have achieved 100% access to electricity. You talk about Tunisia. Tunisia has access to electricity, both the urban and rural communities. You talk about Kenya, you talk about Gabon, you talk about Ghana, and some countries like that. And for us in Nigeria, for instance, we even supply electricity to some neighboring countries. So why have we not invested? Because right now, like she rightly mentioned, the people are going through hardship of the removal of subsidy. I appreciate this issue of bringing in the concept of the foreign exchange. We have what we call MITO, the multi-year tariff order that was put in place in 2022. And what it states is that the tariff should be reviewed, sensitively to market realities every 6 months. So it may go up or down. You see, so what is pushing the foreign exchange up? It's also the mismanagement of our resources. I spoke about Tunisia. They depend on gas. If you look at one of these countries, they rely on coal, wood, and petroleum. We have all these energy mix that we can engage effectively to provide electricity. And like you mentioned, many industrialists have pulled out of Nigeria. Some are threatening to pull out of Nigeria. So how do we revive the economy? What is the purchasing capacity of an average Nigerian right now? The inflation rate is around 22, 24%. It's going to needle at 30. It's pointing at 30. if we don't manage everything well. So how do we cope as a people? Is how do we provide this basic amenity that can help us? So these are issues we need to look at. So while the dialogue is on, can we go to the substantive issues? Because the government is also saying, claiming to subsidize energy tariff with 50 billion on a monthly basis. So these are issues. So we need to get serious. I spoke about countries that engage their gas to provide electricity. We flare ours. And so while this dialogue is on, and I'm glad now that there is no concrete decision to increase this tariff, because I can tell you many more Nigerians will go out of their minds. Already, we had about 133 million citizens under the poverty bracket. And I'm sure that the removal of the fuel subsidy has thrown over 200 million, the entire population, under poverty bracket. And I know what I'm saying. Many people have had to park their exotic vehicles. People are adjusting beyond the belt level and things like that. So, and that is a threat. So, and where are the palliative measures? So, beyond the theory and big grammar, let's look at the reality. Even if this is the time to say, let's confront our challenges, please consider the people. You may not bring everything at the same time, when by the time you finish, you may look around and see few citizens left to benefit from what we are trying to do. So Nigeria needs to go back, not to the drawing board, but to the foundation. And please check it out. 1866, pre-colonial era, so to say. So we should have invested so much. We have read reports of how a president took about $16 million, or, we read all these things and all these things. So where are we going? So those are my submissions this morning. But please, I am on the side of the people. Nigerians are going through a lot. It has made many to be so aggressive. You need to go out there and see how people relate with one another. So please, even when the obvious palliatives are not in sight, don't compound the pains of the hardship right now.
Right. Let's come back to you, Aderonke. You mentioned some things about the government stepping in, and I'm wondering in what ways, how should government step in when, like our guest in the studio pointed out, that government has claimed that there is about 50 billion subsidy with regards to the electricity. And if we are having a dialogue, what should constitute this dialogue that should be had?
Okay, so if the government, as represented by NERC and the executives obviously look into this, if the tariff does go up by 40%, maybe from about 100 naira or 150 naira to about 300 naira, that's a lot of money. So 50 billion is a substantial amount that the government should provide to us then, a 3 to 5 year plan. If every year we're taking back 50 billion from you, that is 150 billion. And we don't want to wait for the government to accrue 150 billion before they say, okay, now we have enough, we're going to start putting infrastructure in place and means of improving generation, transmission, distribution, and things to do with the grid. With the 50 billion earmarked as an annual savings, if tariffs are increased, you can go to international financial institutions, development agencies, and leverage this amount ahead of collection, saying in 3 years' time, we will have somewhere in the coffers 150 billion. What can we get from you at this point, either in terms of technical expertise, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of equipment that will go into the sector immediately? So as we start saving, we're paying down. And these things are very important. If the government can show a clear trend that this is really how much they've been pumping in, and this is how much they will save, and they are collecting, because I know for sure at this time that the amount of money that the discos are collecting is just a small portion of people who use power. The people who pay are paying for themselves and other people who are not captured in the system. So if the system self-corrects and engages a method in which all the users of power are brought in, begin to pay, individuals will actually find out that the rates and the amounts they pay would go down substantially, because a lot of people are carrying other people on their backs at this time. So with all of these kind of things, I see that there could be a way forward. It's not going to eliminate the pinch by any means, but it will improve, and we will have accountability, and we will have a clear sight as to where we're going. In 18 months, we should start seeing this.
What is that way forward?
Accountability from...
What is the way forward?
The way forward is the government should tell us that if they're going to pull back on the subsidies, what are they going to use the money for? How are they going to leverage the money to bring in what is needed in terms of grid improvement, distribution, generation, transmission, all of those things? And there are government agencies across the world that are helping and willing to help. Financial institutions, development agencies that can put money into this system and take back what the government is not spending to expedite and speed up the improvement of the system.
All right.
So let's capture more people into the paying net. The government has to tell us what they're going to use the removal of the monies that they've removed as subsidies, what they're going to use it for. Because Nigerians need to know that this is not another painful exercise that's not leading us anywhere. We've seen this before. They take back something and the money disappears. Snakes swallow money, money disappears from accounts, all kinds of things. We've seen it all.
But the government has said that it was going to channel those monies into infrastructure development, talking about also areas like health, education, and all.
They're going to structure it in 3 years' time. They need to tell us how they're going to leverage that money today, immediately, to bring in money. Because if you can put a plan in front of a development agency saying that in 3 years' time we have 150 billion naira in our coffers, they can start to allow you utilize funds. So it's almost a prepayment for bills that you will incur at a later date. So they need to start now. We are not going to wait for 3 years for them to say, oh, after we accrue X amount of money, then we will start. Because it's a long-term project. Most of the equipment we will need are not things that you can buy off the shelf. Some of them are going to have to be produced to match what we ask for. And there's a lead time. And Nigerians don't have that kind of time anymore. We've wasted so much time. The government has not been transparent. They haven't been fair to Nigerians. So these are the things that between NEC and the discos, the transmission companies and the other stakeholders, they need to tell us what we're going to see for the pain we're going into. And they need to do that immediately.
All right, let's come back to the studio now. I want Mr. Ologun to also, speak to the issue, the role of government. And of course, in this era, we can't call it a new era of privatization in the power sector, but indeed, Nigerians have not, been having it so good. Everybody celebrated when the power sector was privatized, and here we are. There's still high level, if you follow what allegations are saying, high level of corruption. Nigerians still complaining of exorbitant billing and so many other, abnormalities under the new dispensation of Gencos, Discos, and the like. With this new administration now, and the mandate on him in the power sector, first of all, what's your assessment of the privatization? How much good has it really done for Nigerians, and what would you like to see happen?
Privatization is expected to move the economy forward, and of course, you can use the precedent of the telecoms. In the days of Nitel, we had some demigods that you worship to have access to telecom services. But when privatization went in there, we can all see the benefits and the power play between the market forces of demand and supply and the need to be competitive. And let me say this, you see, irrespective of how beautiful your policy sounds, if you don't deal with corruption, it will collapse. And section 15 subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended says that the state shall abolish corrupt practices and abuse of office. Let these major stakeholders in the energy sector come out to say they have not received bailout funds from the government. So what has happened to the bailout funds? Let these stakeholders come out to explain what is meant by crazy billing. I am fortunate to have prepaid meter at home and in the office. Big deliverance, because I can manage my consumption. What about those who should have prepaid meters and do not have prepaid meters? Government, whether it's NEC or DISCO or GENCO or TRANSCO, it's your responsibility. Let me say this. In some communities, the people contribute money to buy transformers, and these transformers become the property of government.
Yes.
I mean, let's wake up. A project fails ab initio from conception. So, and that's why I made reference to foundation. Maybe we need to lay a fresh foundation for this nation. The citizens must have a touch of accountability. It's painful. Recently, a team came to the office and said, we need to change the meter, we should register. I'm not registering for anything. You gave us this prepaid meter. It's good for us. It's not faulty. Don't bring, a fighter jet meter. I'm okay with this. These are policies that are not citizens friendly. So I'm interested in having fluency in the energy sector of the country. Let the government stakeholders go and dialogue. Please let the citizens live. I know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Go out there and look at faces of Nigerians. You see, so whether the bailout and things like that, whether the subsidy will not be paid into my bank account, it's still government. So if we have a country where the accountant general goes away with about 200 billion naira or whatever, then that is the system we want. And if you read section 16 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, it stipulates how the resources of this country should be managed, not to concentrate wealth in the hands of a few, to give us effective system that will make our economy self-reliant. Go and read it. Affordable housing, affordable everything. I mean, I have been monitoring. Some organizations have left this country to other countries. I told you a country nearby has a constant power supply, and a major producer in Nigeria left that country just to bring in the products into the country. And I've said it, that company is into production of tires, rubber product. The Midwestern region of this country in the past should be producing rubber products for all automobile companies across the globe. So we have the resources. Can we engage? So if this is the time, because what we read, okay, NEC is passing the ball to DISCO. DISCO is saying to GENCO. GENCO is saying we produce more than enough. It's not transmitted by... excuse us. That's why we have you in place. Go and dialogue. But please, we are begging, except you increase secretly, and we will know. Please, Nigerians are crying. And I'm not talking for the elite now. The Nigerians we know, they are under a heavy weight of economic hardship. And we need to do something. So go and clean up your business engagements. If some have borrowed and you did not profile the investment you stuck your neck into, it's not the citizens that should pay. Many people do not have access to electricity, but they pay for it.
Yes.
We are not even discussing the fact that some people go out to rent houses and there are bills of 700,000 naira that you more. No. We need justice, we need equity, even in an economy. So these are issues. So I feel the pain of discourse, of NEC, of the Forex migrating. The Forex also is an attempt to clean up. Why should some people go to CBN, buy dollar for 460, walk out of CBN, step out by the roadside, sell the same dollar for 770, and you are saying you don't know those who are sponsoring terrorism in the country? And the money you don't work for you want to use to distract. So government, go and sit and meet. We have a new government now. The president can invite all of them. I said it, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo put the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission together in 2005 by an act for reform. So if we need to reform what has been reformed, we keep on reforming until we have constant electricity. The United States of America has 50 states, constant electricity. So these are issues. We have friends that can help us. In fact, I started by mentioning countries in Africa. I didn't go far to Canada and every. If you go to Ontario, the Niagara waterfalls, and you check out the level of business activities going on there 24/7, I was compelled to make some research. I think they generate about 10,000 megawatts of electricity in that community alone, and a lot of revenue coming into that region. So if there are people who are crippling the efforts of the government, if the government doesn't have what I call the SGGW, strong good governance will, to deal with them, the government will continue to fail. So if you don't know the snakes that are swallowing money, is it Jide Ologun that should now go into the bush and be pursuing snakes? But I'm saying that there is a constitutional provision, Section 15, subsection 5, that the state should abolish, not romance, corrupt practices and abuse of office. So, and if you are not delivering effective services, if you are enslaving the people economically, that is corruption. Deal with it.
Right. Let's bring the conversation to you now on cleaning up the system, Ronke. What it would take is dialoguing enough to clean up the system and have something that can be somewhat affordable and accessible for all Nigerians.
Well, it's a multi-pronged approach from my perspective. First and foremost, as our government, I'm sure the new government is going to be traveling around and going for international conferences and international meetups. They need to open up and let people know they need help. We've tried so many things that haven't worked. Perhaps it's time to bring in people from the outside to do what we seem not to be able to do. There are cheaper funds available, longer-term funds available, better terms and conditions that we can get if we know how to present our case. That's one issue. On a continent-wide basis, there are dams in Africa that can produce enough power to power Africa 10 times over. It's a project that has sat down and not been touched in years. Every few years, it comes back up and people pay it lip service and it's there sitting. I don't see why Nigeria is still where it is. We know what we need to do. We know what we have and what we don't have. But there's just no political will to get these things done. People are making money from all kinds of means around the power sector. More so for the citizens, the government need to have banks, commercial banks especially, put forth ways where people can go into a bank and get a loan to convert their homes to partial solar and perhaps partial power from the grid. That would ease things. But a whole house, at this point will probably cost 10 million. Nobody has 10 million naira. But perhaps if a bank would give a loan to a Nigerian citizen and say, over an 18-month period, you pay me X amount of money, then more people will convert from 100% grid power to partial renewable, partial grid. And that might help a lot of people, help some businesses. Also, our gas. We have an abundance of gas in Nigeria. Nigeria is not an oil country. It's a gas country. How come we're not utilizing our gas, which we're still flaring? We're not collecting the penalties from the people who are flaring, and we're complaining. Those are places where penalties for people flaring should be diverted into commercial entities where people can now use that to leverage, to reduce their cost of power. So there's so many things that we could put on the table and work together to ensure that the government is able to start to build the infrastructure and the improvements that they need. Citizens can also lower their individual cost, and other agencies in the oil and gas sector, in the finance sector, we all need to come together at the table. And as the other gentleman said, let's go back to the foundations. What did we do wrong? How can we correct it? And if what we've done wrong cannot be corrected, let's put it to another side and start something fresh that's clean and clear and would bring about the impact that we're looking for. Nigerians have really tried in terms of patience. We need to move forward, and we need to help the government do what needs to be done, either by advocating, either by shutting down systems when we're not being heard, and forcing them to come to the table to communicate clearly and let us know what it is they're planning to do and how it's going to affect our businesses, our homes, and the economy as a whole.
All right, Ronke Onodeko, I'm still with you. We're still with you, I should say. I also want to ask your take on the recent decentralization of, distribution, generation, and transmission of electricity. Now that states will also get to share in the autonomy in this new dispensation and under a new administration. How hopeful are you that things will turn around for the better?
It's a very great initiative, but we have to understand that almost all the equipment that would be needed to accomplish any of this, we have to import. The scarcity and cost of foreign exchange is prohibitive. So if as a country, we do not go and negotiate good terms of access to finance, especially long-term, because they're not short-term projects, we will not move very far. It's the government has set an enabling environment, but the ability to get the funds to utilize for such a project, the government hasn't finished what they've started. They still need to go a step further to ensure that Nigeria, as a sovereign, can go out and ask for funding that individual private organizations or, whether private or private-public partnerships, we need to find a way where we can access funds cheaper, larger, and longer term based on sovereign identities. Every businessman cannot go to the international market and go and negotiate as strongly as a government can go on behalf of an industry or a sector. So I think the government still has a lot of work to do beyond where they are at the moment.
Now, some would look at the Siemens deal that government, the past administration initiated. There are reports that that project is 80% complete as we speak, and that it's meant to address the matter of electricity supply and all of it. But how does this come into the mix of this conversation? What does it address, and how will this change the narrative with regards to infrastructure development as well as making electricity affordable and accessible?
You see, in economics, there are two forces in cost. Cost of production, which has a direct correlation with the cost of consumption. So, for instance, if we have an effective, productive ecosystem, then it will bring down the cost. It's the whole, we are discussing at the macro level. Let me go to the petroleum sector. If, for instance, we have all our 4 government refineries working, we have 6 other geopolitical refineries working, then we don't need to export our crude oil or exchange it for a country that is wiser to refine. We bring back at premium to sell at premium to the citizens. So you bring down that cost. Let me say this. Under the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations that will be evaluated in the year 2030, there is room for partnership. China is a friend of Nigeria. While dealing and relating with them carefully, they can help us, even with solar energy in the country. We have all the energy mix to establish. I am one of those that believe that Nigeria is too blessed. We speak about not being able to sustain infrastructure here. All those infrastructures in the UK and US and Canada, where our leaders run to, don't they see Nigerians excelling over there? You see, so when we bring down that cost and be transparent and form a synergy, it's not that Genco is competing with a transmission company and we just passing the buck. Then we bring down the cost. We have constant electricity, and what happens? Cottage businesses can spring up. In fact, your health will stabilize. I don't know if we have done a clinical research of the impact of all this sudden departure of energy supply, and you have to struggle. You know, your life is distorted. You know, when you are in an environment where there is constant power supply, you can take your clothes to laundromat, you know, dry clean, keep them in a bag. 5 minutes to your getting out of the house, you iron. But here, you find some people ironing clothes for a whole weekend, all their necks paining them. So we need to bring all these things in. Do we have the capacity? Yes. What is happening to the Ajakuta steel rolling mill? A project that started even before the Second Republic, around 1978. So, and that's where I'm appealing now. And some may say I'm apologetic. Yes, we are at that point. Please, help Nigeria. God has blessed this country. She mentioned something very brilliant, Mr. Netoko. Do you know that Nigeria can generate the power required for the whole of Africa? If we are sincere. If we are sincere, well, you just find some personalities there who are, you know, irreconcilably greedy, and they distort things, and, you know, because the picture you see out there with the affluence some people throw around does not correlate with the poverty in the land. So can the government go now and say, okay, what is the vision? We must have electricity. What is the mission? How do we go about it? If there are those who are hindering us, look at this fuel subsidy removal now. Some Nigerians are just getting to learn that about 7 trillion naira disappears into subsidy. The 100 billion naira that was spent on moribund refineries. So who are the contractors that collected that money? And the refineries are now still working. These are issues. So we removed fuel subsidy in Nigeria. People are protesting in Cameroon. So you see us, we are discussing electricity now. Don't we supply electricity to Benin Republic, to Togo, to Niger? You see, so these are issues. Let's just, for once, pity Nigeria. How did Singapore achieve it? How did they do it in Dubai? Our president and his team, they may travel. They may not even need to travel. On your phone, you can learn what has been done. You know, we have all this. Like she rightly mentioned, I was on a research, and the person told, we're even discussing this issue of IPP, this independent power project. I went as far as Cross River State. And the man told me that, Barrister Logo, that let me tell you, Nigeria is not even an oil field. Nigeria is a gas field. And what I heard that man say, I was almost weeping. They will lay this pipe or terminate it at, just like you are repairing a stretch of 70 kilometers road, you repair only 35, you lead 15 bad out of it, then you go and repair the remaining one at the end. So distorted. So the government should sit down, concretize where we should be going, and find what is needed to get there. And let me bring this scriptural analysis. When Nehemiah came to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, he got some thugs and armed them with arrow, bow and arrow. To say anybody who is against this project, deal with them. I'm not advocating that we should raise thugs, but can the government wake up and put machinery in place? How is it done in Saudi Arabia that they don't break their pipelines? It's done with IT devices. Can we get serious? Nigerians do not have any business with poverty or hardship. Please. And let the dialogue move us in the direction of substantial development.
All right, but then who is there to also, you know, checkmate these excesses? This next question is for you, Mr. Onodeko. When you look at the role of labor, and already regarding the planned tariff increase, we've already seen some body language from labor. The unions are already speaking now about that this may just set it on a collision course with the regulatory agencies as well as, you know, the discos. Where do you see this all going in terms of labor fighting the cause of the masses on this rather sensitive issue?
Well, Labour has a point in determining and speaking on behalf of people. What my take is that we need to move forward. Sitting at home for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks is not going to solve the problem. So it's just going to compound the problem, because people who make their livelihood from daily sales are even going to be more impacted if we sit at home. So the first thing is really to get government to go back to the drawing board and engage with all the stakeholders. We don't have time for optics. Labor's usual way of doing things is, oh, everybody sit at home. Eventually, envelopes will pass hands and we'll be back to where we started from. Nobody would have moved an inch, apart from the people who collected brown envelopes. So let's just put that aside and tell Labour to please engage in a constructive way. The federal government needs to work on behalf of Nigerians. That's why they were voted in. They should sit down and figure a way for Nigerians to move ahead with their personal lives and their businesses in security. Electricity, power, fuel, food are not luxuries. These things are basic necessities for Nigerians. So we don't need a labor showdown for government to sit up and realize that these are places where they need to focus their attention on immediately. Advocacy can be done in many ways. Labor should find ways to start engaging and open the conversations. It's not by a stand down and shut down that we can get that done. If the Labour really want to help, they should start dialogues. They should start bringing stakeholders together. And let's see if the government will not be embarrassed that somebody else has taken their role and their responsibility. They will sit up and they will join the conversation and get to spearhead what they should have been doing. So I don't think that the Labour going ahead and saying, okay, if the government put up the tariffs, they're going to shut down the country. That's not what we need at this time. Things are bad enough. Things are hard for people. Families are almost disintegrating. Angry daddies and angry mommies and not enough food on the table. That's not what we need. So I think we should engage with Labour and get them to move into an area of negotiation, of communication. We don't need any more strikes.
Right. Let's bring the conversation to the studio, where as we'll be wrapping things up now. There has been talks about lobbying for some key positions, and we know that this aspect of power is a key position. What kind of person would you be hoping the president will be handing that portfolio to, that will be able to drive all of these issues that we have been speaking about in the interest of Nigerians?
We expect that he will engage eggheads who are technocrats. But let me say this, with the kind of structure we have in Nigeria, sometimes you put that egghead there, and the people who are expected to work with him are out to frustrate him. So the government needs to evaluate that ecosystem so that we don't have what we have in Habakkuk 1:4, that the righteous man is hemmed in by the wicked and they prevent justice from proceeding. So we need to put Nigeria as a project on the table. There are some people, they wake up in the morning, they go to bed in the night just to deal negatively with this country. And they are influential. So we are still talking about all thieves. Who are the all thieves? Are they angels from heaven? They are human beings in our midst, highly influential. You see, so that's what we need. There are some who they sustain their greedy lifestyle with contracts. I can challenge us now to go to a location where these transformers are kept. They are kept and covered. Some were even abandoned at the port. These are issues. You need to follow through.
Right.
So we need to deal with the human element, those who are making unnecessary gains of the people. And when they realize that their hands are off, they allow the system to flow. And I have always been saying this. Next to God's government, the next powerful force is the earthly government. So I wish this government the best in bringing a new lease of life and true dividends of democracy to the people.
Absolutely. We'll leave the conversation here. We must thank you, lawyer and social development advocate Jide Ologun, as well as a principal consultant, DRNL Consult Limited, Adirunke Onodeko. Thank you for your time on the program.